Our Commitment 2016 team coverage continues tonight with our exclusive political analysts. The experts are here. Former State Rep Adam Hasner, former U.S. Congressman Ron Klein. Gentlemen, thanks for watching the debate with us. Let's go to work. Adam, I'm going to start with you. A lot of people said Donald Trump had to appear presidential tonight. For at least the first 30 to 40 minutes, that was the case, was it not?
I think it was. He appeared very authentic. I think he made the case that he was the change candidate. I think he did well on attacking Hillary Clinton on her email server. And then I think she got under her skin. Under his skin.
What happened exactly?
I think he went after his business interests, his tax returns, and I think he took it very personally. And you started to see him get a little bit more emotional, start to interrupt a little bit more, start to swing a little bit more and miss, and I think it didn't connect. And so if you were watching the first third of the debate, I think you saw what we wanted to see from Trump if you're a supporter. And then during the second part of the debate, or second half of the debate, I think she really took it to him on the attack.
Ron Klein, let's talk about connections, because one challenge that Hillary Clinton had tonight wasn't so much on policy, but it was on connecting with people. Did she accomplish any of that tonight?
I think she did. I think she was warm. She came across as understanding the issues, but not getting too wonky. And she went at Donald Trump with substance. And as I agree with Adam, I think that when it came to the taxes, defending his business practices, the birther, I don't know what his answer was on the birther issue at all. Not that there's a good defense for it, but it really got under his skin, and he started moving around, and his demeanor of not finishing sentences, it just became more of a rambling presentation.
Let me ask you both, and I'll start with you, Adam, and that is when this became more of a let's interrupt the moderator, or let's interrupt the other candidate. Can that be effective, or could it hurt a candidate, especially somebody like Donald Trump, who we know he's got a big personality?
Well, it can be effective, especially in a situation when we've been talking about the candidates being the fact checker on the other candidate. And I think Donald Trump did that effectively in most instances. Sometimes he did talk over, which runs the risk of him being perceived as a bully. But I think he did a good job of that. And also, too, he challenged Lester Holt. I think a lot of people who are Trump supporters don't think that the mainstream media is doing anything to help Donald Trump, and certainly aiding Hillary Clinton's campaign. And so he kept challenging Lester Holt. I think that worked to his advantage. But we're going to have to see how people reacted at home and watching.
I actually think that's a funny comment, because I think Donald Trump has been the master of media. He's used it to every advantage for hundreds of millions of dollars of coverage. I think he's been good at it. I mean, he's a reality show guy, so he knows how to use it.
All right, so the next debate, if you had one piece of advice for each candidate, Ron, starting with you, what would you give to Hillary Clinton? What would she do next?
I think keep going. Talk about the issues, but do it in a way that connect with people. Talk about jobs. Talk about Donald Trump's problems, his bankruptcies, all the things that his big persona is. I'm the successful business guy.
Let me stop you, because Adam, you've got about 15 seconds.
Yeah, Donald Trump can't be defensive. He can't be explaining. When you're explaining, you're losing. He has to be on the attack, talking about the issues, again, of Hillary Clinton's emails, has to talk about the fact that he is the change candidate, that Hillary Clinton has been the problem and he's the solution.
October 9th is round 2 of this, gentlemen. Thank you for your time tonight.